interviews. So that's the best laid plans can come undone. But basically, we've got at the start of the video there, we had Simon Sinek talking to Larry King. Now, what he's basically saying is Larry King's asking him, do men and women lead differently? And what Simon Sinek's response was that he says, well, it's not that I believe we need more female leaders. We need more leaders that act like females, and women just happen to be better at that. And I think that that's an interesting take, particularly speaking to Larry King, and he says that women are more interested in leadership than when I was younger. And I think that that's sort of something that people struggle with. And we've got Susie Dent talking about the Me Too movement next week, which isn't about, it's maybe not about what you think. But in regards to leadership, this is where the leadership is definitely going towards kind and courageous leadership. And one of the biggest advocates I know in regards to this is Sonia McDonald, who's our guest tonight. So welcome, Sonia. And I guess I guess the first thing in regards to kind and courageous leadership, what is it? And I guess, looking at what's gone on in the digital platform and problems I've had at the moment, how do you identify, or as a kind and courageous leader, what to do and getting things done without having to basically cross that line where you're not being kind and courageous, I guess. Is kind and courageous leadership is the first question.
Yeah, I mean, I go back to the topic of what I think leadership, I think we've made leadership bigger than what it is. I think we've made leadership about being a role or title. So therefore, I think many of us kind of see that if I kind of think about leadership, that's a CEO, or that's a general manager, or that's a prime minister or a president. So I think sometimes we attach leadership to role or title, but leadership isn't about role or title. Leadership is about mindset. It's about action. It's about behavior. It's about attitude. And so I think that's first and foremost, is that everyone and anyone can be a leader. I think we need more leaders, more so now today than ever before. And I think at the end of the day, leadership is about making a difference. It's about making an impact. And it can be small acts of courage and kindness that can make a big difference. And I suppose for me, if I think about kindness and courage, and I'm also, obviously, the awards and the work we do are around kindness, courage, and inclusive leadership, is that you can still be strong as a leader. You can still be, I think we kind of identify kindness as being a weakness, where kindness isn't, it's a superpower. So you can still be you can still be strong as a leader and be kind. And kindness is around, being polite and showing gratitude and showing empathy and doing things for others, and helping others and inspiring and helping. Like, one of my favorite quotes is, leadership is about how you inspire others to do more, learn more, and be more. And you can do that with kindness. Courage, which is another interesting thing. I believe that you can still show courage as a leader and have fear, because courage isn't the absence of fear, it's the mastery of fear. And I think, if I think about even, all the courageous acts that I've reflected on throughout my life and career, these were elements and acts of leadership. And when I started my company from a blog, that was an act of courage. When I decided I wanted to do the awards, and then, the challenges I've had with having to reschedule the awards 4 times because of COVID, that was courage, because I kept moving forward. I kept going, okay, I've got to pick myself up and have the courage, because I know that this will make a difference to the world. So I think it's about, we've all got that inner kindness and courage. We've just got to kind of tap into it and know that that we need courage and kindness more than we have ever before. Especially, I think we've identified that this year as well.
Yeah. I think it's something that, and the keynote speaker from Guy Russo was involved with turning around Kmart, and I was watching it and him saying that, they gave him the measures and everything as to what it was in. It was all about the shareholders and basically satisfying the shareholders. But he said to him, everyone's opinion mattered, from the customers down to the floor staff to the supply chain, and he wanted to talk to everyone and basically get a consensus. But the one thing that he went, okay, yeah, we want to work out what the problem is, but he also identified what they were doing right. And Sally, that was on last week, wrote Pain-Free Networking for Introverts, and she says that an introvert's superpower is they're really good listeners. Do you think that that's something that, in regards to leadership these days, they're actually more so, it's a better skill if they can listen rather than talk? Is that something that you're finding with a lot of the examples of leadership out there at the moment as well?
Yeah, I think, I suppose I always say to people who've got two ears and one mouth for a reason. I mean, I know that's a silly kind of analogy to think about, but I think listening is, again, a really great skill if you're able to really listen to people and also be open to other people's ideas. Again, this is where I think being inclusive and respectful is really important, is being open to that. As Guy Russ has said, he wanted to speak to everyone at Kmart because he saw that he could get leadership from all levels at Kmart and listen to what they think is going right at Kmart, what's not going right. And you need to listen to that. You need to listen to people within your organisation and business. And I think I think a lot of leaders that I find don't tend to do that very well. They tend to feel as though because they're leaders, they need to have all the answers and all this. But as a leader, again, it takes courage to go, I don't know. I don't have all the answers. So I need to listen to people around me. It's better to surround yourself with people with different strengths and viewpoints to yourself so you can focus on your strengths and listen to what they suggest. Yeah.
Okay. I used to say that the difference between leaders and like chiefs, because leaders can hear you and chiefs can only show what you need to do and tell you things, not hear you.
They tell you what to do.
Different.
Something that I think that this is where I'm sort of starting to understand. You rescheduled your award 4 times, and you had major sponsors and all this sort of thing that stuck by you. And I believe CQU has actually signed up for next year as well.
Yes.
And I think that this is where it's being courageous and kind in this environment. I think that stands out to a lot of businesses. And is that something that, like I said before, this is just your normal, you're used to getting things done. But do you think that that's part of the reason why you get things done is when you called me and said, oh, look, we the venue's pulled out or something like that. It wasn't, oh my God, the venue's pulled out, what am I going to do? It was, do you know of a venue that we could move it to? Positive mental attitude and things like that. Do you think that that's something that is that something that you see with a lot of other leaders out there, and particularly with the award nominees, that they've got that attitude like you, where they just go, it's not a question of whether or not they could, it's just a question of whether or not they should. Is that something that you're seeing as well?
Yeah, look, I definitely think, I don't know if you've ever watched Angela Duckworth's video on grit, her TED talk on grit. Mm-hmm. She talks about perseverance and passion. Mm-hmm. And I think because I'm so passionate about I was so passionate about the awards and so passionate around the purpose of why we were doing the awards, I was so passionate about it. And I knew I needed to persevere. I just sort of thought I just have to keep moving forward. There's, if I let the fact that COVID's here and let it pull me down, then I'm not going to stay true to my brand around courage. If I go, oh, okay, I give up now. I'm not, we're not doing these awards, and that wouldn't be very courageous. So I knew, but yeah, I do see. And look, we're all human beings, you know what I mean? Like we all have those days we go, I actually don't want to be courageous today. Like sometimes I just go, but I have to say, this year, I think this year in particular has actually shown people their inner courage and inner resilience. That I think it's really tested it, and I think that if you have that inner courage, if you're able to really pick yourself up and keep moving forward, you can achieve anything. And I think that's the key to being a leader, is just keep moving forward, regardless of the knocks. Just keep moving forward.
So now, did I see the winner of the Courageous Leader Award? Was that Joe?
Yes.
Did you? Yeah. There we go. I think that's someone that I met through Bed Down. Joe was actually a sponsor with that there too, and helping out Norm with all that sort of thing too. You know, I know that you've known Joe for a few years now as well. He put up a post on Facebook saying, you know, it was a surprise to me. He didn't see himself as courageous. He said arrogant, maybe. Well, arrogant is pretending to have superior importance. I would say that Joe as a leader knows exactly how important he is as a leader, but also how important his team is. That's something that come out in the thank yous that he did, and that sort of thing there as well. Very down to earth guy and that sort of thing as well. Not probably what you would see as a traditional leader, but I think a lot of people in the entrepreneurial space aren't. It's the guy walking around in shorts and thongs that's probably the millionaire. Is it something that, in regards to leadership image, you say that leadership isn't a title, but I see a lot of people that have got a title as a leader, but they're actually managers in a business. So this is where I would say that what does the modern leader look like, I guess, is something here. How can you identify a modern leader? And if it's not physical, you know, how do we identify who the leader of organizations are really?
Look, I think the modern leader is now really understanding that it is about others, that leadership is about others. It's not about yourself. So it's not about, well, I'm the CEO, so you must respect me or obey me or things like that. I think the modern leader is a lot more around others and supporting and helping others. I think the modern leader is a lot more empathetic. I think empathy is, again, a really great superpower. As you said, listening. I think the modern leader is authentic, so they kind of go, this is who I am. And they're also, like, they own who they are and they're really aware of who they are. I think the modern leader is someone that is vulnerable and goes, you know what? These are kind of, like, as I said, who I am, but I've made a mistake and I'm going to put my hand up and say, you know, I made a mistake, I'm going to fix it. And I don't know, I just think the modern leader, I think what is definitely kind of evolving is the modern leader is becoming a lot kinder to people and so they're kinder to themselves than others.
Yep.
I mean, that's kind of how I'm seeing leadership at the moment through the work we're doing.
Okay. And I've seen some comments from Gary Vee lately that said that he actually works for his employees, and that's what the great leaders do. Is that, I guess that fits into the servant leadership style, which, you know, I saw in your toolkit, you know, different leadership styles and all this sort of thing. This is where it comes into, that's pretty hard for it. It sounds easy and it's simple, but it's not easy. How do you know when to let go and how to delegate and how to, I guess, you know, deal with that part that you can't do everything and the vulnerability of actually letting people do stuff? And what do you do when they let you down? You know, and I'm sort of thinking with you personally. It's a big question. You know, you can't do everything. You're only human, Sonia. I keep telling you this, but you keep proving me wrong.
Oh, look, I think it's just recognizing what your strengths are. I mean, and what you're not good at. You know, it's kind of, gosh, I know what I love, what I'm passionate about, what my strengths are. And one of the greatest decisions I made recently this year in the middle of COVID, thinking, how am I going to do this? But I'm going to do it and have faith in myself, is I hired someone part-time to help me with admin, because I could tell with the awards it was getting really busy. And got all these applications in, and I ended up choosing someone I would never normally choose, but she had this beautiful attitude. She didn't really have the or she had the skill set, but she didn't have all the skills that I needed, but I knew I could teach her, and she's turned into be gold. And I just delegate so much stuff to her because I actually really believe in her and I aspire her to be the best she can be. And look, and the stuff that she sends me back, I just go, you know what? It's like, and what's perfect? I go, what you're doing is great. Like, she's now wanting to help with social media and stuff. I just think that you've got to delegate. It's the only way that people are going to grow and learn. I think and it's actually a skill that leaders find really challenging. But at the end of the day, you've really got to trust your people. And as a leader, especially when you're if you think about traditional leadership, if you're climbing up the ladder, you need to stop with the doing and the detail and be more strategic. So you need to delegate, but it also helps develop others. And if it comes back that it's not right and you delegate and it's not, well, just deal with it. You just have to deal with it and go, you know what? And let's just move forward and have the courage. Like, I never get upset about that stuff. I kind of go, life's too short to get worried about the small stuff. I just go, let's just fix it, So, I mean, I don't know. This is where kindness matters. I just go, at the end of the day, I'm always really kind in my leadership. So,
and I guess it doesn't have to be perfect, does it? A lot of times. And it's quicker for you to adjust it or fix it than to start from scratch. And that's what I say to people, a lot of people that have a lot of trouble delegating. But you mentioned knowing what your strengths are and doing what you love. When people ask me that, how do I delegate? I say, well, what don't you like doing? And they go, I can do everything. And I go, that doesn't help me work out what to delegate. And that's something that what you love and you're very passionate about, and you can see your eyes light up when you start talking about things. But then when you talk about admin, it's like, you're quite happy to delegate that to someone. Now, you got over 100 nominees or something. There was 100 finalists.
Yes.
Something like that. Now, most awards programs start with maybe 4 to 6 groups and that sort of thing. How many categories did you have in your awards program to start with?
I think 12, 11 or 12. Yeah.
Okay. So double what a normal, when I say normal, I don't mean neurotypical.
No, I've seen awards with a similar category count. I have, like the Brisbane, was it the Young Entrepreneurial Awards have similar.
Yep.
It was a lot of categories. I agree. It was a lot of categories.
Yeah, and in a challenging time, but you didn't go, we're going to bump it back. We're going to do this. We're going to downsize, whatever, that a lot of companies are talking about. You're going, no, this is what we're doing. We're going to go with that. And we've
actually launched our 2021 awards with new categories.
So you're already growing. Well, you can't improve something that doesn't exist, and you've got the first one going. And I know that this has basically been a dream of yours. People mightn't realize that Leadership HQ has been going for 12 years.
Yeah.
And you are a leadership coach, and this is how you make this is how you earn your income, or this is your business.
Yeah.
And you've come from a long HR background and everything else. You've been through the trenches and everything else there as well. I guess, this is always the question where, and you probably had this before, if you had some advice for your younger self, maybe 12 years ago when you started Leadership HQ, what sort of advice would you look to give people that are looking to get into leadership or leadership coaching or something?
Oh, into leadership and leadership coaching, don't do it. I'm just joking.
That's the same advice I give to people when they say they want to start a business.
It was really, 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 really hard work. Oh gosh, if you wanted to get into leadership or leadership coaching, start reading lots of leadership books. There's plenty. Even like one of mine.
Yeah, you always got them handy. There we go.
Sorry, I just plugged that one. It just has to be sitting there. I wasn't going to. What advice would I think that if you're really passionate about something or you've got a dream inside of you, just do it. Like if there's something, don't be afraid to ask people for help. I think that's really important as well. I think, and be okay with making mistakes. Like I've made so many mistakes. Like, oh my gosh, I've stuffed up so many times. So I kind of just go, Leadership coaching, if you wanted to get a leadership coaching. Just read lots of books. And I think self-awareness is really, really key with this stuff. So get to know who you are. I think that's really important, that self and personal leadership. So understand what your values are, what you're passionate about and things.
And I think that's something with coaching in general. But as a leader, are you expected to be a coach or a mentor, maybe more so that people learn off you and this sort of thing? Do you think that leaders, there's training, there's coaching, and there's mentoring, and you hear people say that these terms are interchangeable and all this sort of stuff, but you also say no. People say I'm a mentor, I'm a coach, or this sort of thing there too. Is that sort of knowing what you do? And yes, you can be a mentor or you can be a trainer, but this is just because if that's not what you do you think that they're going to struggle, or should they basically just decide who they are or what they want to be and then go and say, well, this is what I want to do? But if someone says, well, I can also do this, what does that say to you when being someone that actually loves to specialize and you're very clear with what you do with your brand and everything else? When I hear someone say, oh, I can also do this, I find it hard to trust them. But in regards to maybe there's someone better that can do it, but I always think that anyone can do things better than me. I mean, I know that you can do an interview better than me because I've seen them, but it's just with leaders and things like that. We mentioned, and I'll just sort of finish off on this point, and I'll see if the students have got some questions there too. But do leaders have to be everything to everyone in the organization? Because or do they have to be like other people? This is what I'm getting. You mentioned reading books and things like that, and I get people say to me, "Oh, look, I want to be like Richard Branson," but they don't want to be like Richard Branson when he owned the record shop above the shoe shop. And when I say that to them, they go, "What? What are you talking about?" I said, "That's where he started. Rock and roll promoter, things like that." Yeah. So if they don't have to be everything to everyone, I guess that what you've been through in the last 12 years has probably made you so resilient. And that's why you've been able to do such a wonderful thing, which was the awards, which is really one of your dreams come true. But as soon as it came true, you went on to, well, the next one's open. So has it sunk in that this is actually one of your dreams that's come true? Or when did that sink in, if it did? Was it sort of during the event? Or is it now?
Okay. I was taking everything you were saying there. I don't think it's really sunk in, I suppose, because I felt the awards weren't, again, this is me being hard on myself, and this is where I think kindness for yourself is really important. I'm way too hard on myself because I think because my dream was it to be like the Golden Globes or Oscars of the leadership awards.
Yeah.
And it wasn't quite there, but then I sort of thought to myself, well, you know what, we learned a lot through that experience. We learned a lot on the night of the awards, and I think that's just leadership in general, like wherever you are, regardless of the awards or whatever you're doing in life, always keep learning and always keep, like if you feel like you're getting knocked down or you feel like it's not exactly where you thought you would be, or go, what can I learn from this? What can I take away from this? What could I do differently next time? Is just never let go of the dream. Like if you've got a dream or if there's something you're really passionate about, and just keep moving forward. Like you just have to keep going, okay, I'm just going to make sure that I just keep growing and learning. And because I want to look back on and look at my legacy and go, when I get to the day that I'm no longer on this earth, the day that look back on my life, I want to go, I'm really proud of the life I lived, and I led the way I wanted to lead, and I led in a way that I was able to make a difference, and I was able to achieve the things that I was passionate about. So I think that I always think about that. I always think that, again, like we had 100 finalists on Friday night, and everyone was when he was in that room, is it was just such an honor to be there, and it was such an honor to see that platform or the movement we're creating is actually going to make a difference. And that's the legacy I want to leave, regardless of how small. It could be like the smallest thing where someone from that night has the courage to go out and do something great because of the awards. If it's even just one person, then I'm excited by that. So don't ever let go of your dreams or what you're passionate about.
Yeah, and I think I was reading just before the awards last week that Desmond Tutu became who he was because a white man stood aside for him and his mum in the street, and that's why he decided to become a priest, because it was actually it was a priest that did that to him. And you look at where he comes from, such a small thing. So that's why I think what you've done is amazing. I want to let you go because I'm looking at the time and I know that you've got other commitments and I don't want you to let them down. But just quickly with the students here, we're going to hang around and have a chat when you go, Sonia.
Yeah.
But the students, have you got any questions or some things that you would like to ask Sonia now? And we can connect her with you later. I think we're going to connect Tiago with you and he can do talk to you about your Google.
Cool. This is awesome.
But do you have any questions with leadership before we go? And I'm going to have a talk, and we're going to talk about you when you go, Sonia.
Awesome.
But I say that in jest because I know that I don't want to embarrass you, and I do think it's special what you're doing. But I want to just talk about that with the students there too. So, any questions, guys, before Sonia heads off? Okay, just open your mic. No. Yep, Tiago. That's it. Unmute yourself. Go for it. Oops. Hang on. The mic's cut out. Oh, hang on. I'm glad I'm not the only one with tech issues there as well. Okay, tell you what, we'll see if we can get it going, and we'll let
someone else has got a question.
Yep. Okay. Yep. Annika. Annika's from Japan, so you guys might have some stuff to talk about afterwards.
Hi, Sonia. My name's Amanda. I'm actually interested in your findings from your trip to Japan because before studying marketing, I was actually studying sociology and anthropology in Japan. So I'm quite interested with your findings.
Gosh, I have to connect you with my daughter because she's studying that, and we've both got a love affair with Japan. Look, I think the reason why it was interesting going this second time I've gone to Japan, and this time it was really, I was finishing writing my book, and the reason why I was very keen to do some research and write my book in Japan is I actually find the culture in there, they're so kind in Japan. Like, I find the kindness in Japan really inspiring. And I find the courage really inspiring over there. Like, I look at them as people, and like I went to Hiroshima and obviously went to the museum there, and the stories of courage in that museum is amazing. Look, I'm not saying any country and culture is perfect, but I suppose for me, I just find the people in Japan incredibly kind, and that's really inspired me. And I just think the history, I don't know, I just feel really lovely. I just find that, like, I just found it was a perfect place for me to write my book.
There we go. That's interesting. And we just had one interesting one that I think from social media there as well. It just says some tips on giving feedback. I'm assuming it's not just giving feedback, it's taking feedback, I guess. As a
Are we talking about positive feedback or developmental feedback?
Well, I'd like to keep it positive. I guess giving feedback. Okay, so I guess both. Is it different, both giving positive and giving negative feedback, do you think?
Look, I find people find giving developmental feedback definitely more challenging than positive feedback. Look, I think when it comes to developmental feedback, it has to be timely. So it has to be, I don't leave it a couple of months afterwards. I think that if there's any kind of constructive or develop. And also the thing with giving any sort of feedback, make sure it's with good intent. So I think if you do it with heart and intent, say, hey, I'm actually doing this with good intent and kindness because I really want to help you succeed and I want to help you learn and I want to help you improve, then I think that's really powerful, because if you're framing it with good intent and with kindness and with heart, people are going to take it that way versus just giving someone feedback, going, hey, look, I want to give you some feedback because you were crap at that and you could have done better. So if you kind of frame it that you're there to help them be better and coach them around that, I think that's really important. I think with positive feedback, again, timely, and we need to be giving a lot more positive feedback. The one thing I hear from leaders and organizations is we are okay giving people feedback when they're not doing the right thing, but why don't we give enough people feedback when they're doing the right thing or doing great work? So I think we need to make sure, again, when you're seeing great work or seeing like success, I think we need to be lifting each other up a lot more. Is say it. Say, hey, awesome work. I'm so proud of you. Like, you know, I just want to say you did this great, and actually give them details. Say, I love the way you did this. I love the way you did that. And like, well done. How did you feel you went? I also ask them about how they went with any sort of feedback. And also be open to receiving feedback. I think that's really important as well. The other thing that I find works well is I always ask for permission to give someone feedback. So if I see something and go, hey, I just noticed you did this piece of work, would you be okay if I gave you some feedback about it? Is ask them if they're open to it. Some people aren't. Some people go, actually, no. That's all right, I don't want to have feedback. And I go, okay, that's cool. No, I just sort of thought if you're interested, I could give you some feedback. So I always like ask for permission. Does that help? I mean, that's just some really good tips. If they want me to send them some tips, I've actually got lots of stuff I can send them around that. So,
I've seen how much content you've got to send. So it's huge, guys. And so, you know, there's things like that there as well, but I do appreciate your time. We will let you go, Sonia.
Oh, that's it. I wanted to show everyone something because we received this afternoon at 5 p.m.
Can you hear me?
T-shirts and totes. I've made do you like them? Hang on, can you see?
Yep.
Yeah.
So you've got the T-shirt. Oh,
Yeah, so I've started making T-shirts and totes. My brand's called Courage & Co.
Yeah.
I've started making T-shirts and totes to get people being more courageous and kind.
There we go.
If you could share with us your profile, Facebook or Instagram, that we can follow you.
Well, I'll put it in. Tell you what, I'll put it in the comments afterwards, Sonia, for them. I'm just putting up. If you look up Leadership HQ,
I'll send it through. It's on my Sonia McDonald site, so we put that under the Sonia brand.
Yeah.
I know that sounds weird that I've got a Sonia brand.
We've got what, 3 or 4 brands now, I think.
Why did you go there? I know I've got a few brands. I know that. It's called.
I've got 4, so a lot of people don't know, but I actually run 4 brands. But I've got to do that to do this sort of stuff. But you don't. You do this because you love it, and each of your different brands and that sort of thing. And that's kind of how I compartmentalize and separate. And I'll kind of like have a few conversations with myself from being a different brand managers, and putting things in there. And I find that keeps me ironically sane. But I sort of, you know, I'll put up the links and that sort of thing there as well for the students.
That's cool. I just wanted to show you guys because I just received them and I was pretty excited about it. So if you need anything, let me know. You guys are rock stars.
We've got a couple of students in the class that were selling their own clothing labels and that sort of thing on Instagram, really cool. Over in Colombia and Brazil. So, you know, we'll work out some sort of affiliate marketing deal or something like that.
We'll have to.
Yeah, I think so.
All right, beautiful ones.
Okay. Thanks very much, Sonia.
Okay, thank you.
We'll talk soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay. All right. So, you know, that's Sonia McDonald. Okay, she's just had a leadership award. She had all these big business leaders and all this sort of stuff. Now, this is something that I talk to leaders, and they just say they're just regular. Does she sound like a regular people to you? Or
no.
No? Yeah. Okay. What stands out as something that you think puts her above what you would consider a normal, a regular person to be? Can you put your finger on it?
Oh, I think the way that she speaks, and also she always is talking about like kindness. I felt it's really good, and it makes her like different for sure.
Yeah, she's not just putting it in there for the sake of it. It's top of mind the whole time. And you know, if I go back through the video and someone counts how many times she mentions kind or kindness or courage, all this sort of thing, I think that that's something that doesn't change what she says. And I've known her for a few years now, and she hasn't changed what she said because of COVID-19. And I say that if someone does what they love, then they're consistent. They keep doing it. And we'll talk with Susie next week. Now, she works in the film and television industry, and that's how she come to prominence through the Me Too movement. But she, because of what she did and she spoke out, she actually had to, she wasn't named originally, but the media worked out who she was, you know, and this is where this was always going to happen. And it comes down to that's going to affect her family, her work and everything else. But she loves looking after people and caring for people. And she says, oh, look, you know, I've got to work outside the industry now, but she's working as a carer. So she's still doing what she loves doing. And I think that that's something that I see with Sonia there as well. Now, do you have an idea of, you know, that's Sonia is someone that not only is she a friend of mine, I know her personally, and a daughter that I mentioned, and her daughter's wonderful too. I will actually put her in contact with you, Annika, because she's studying and all this sort of stuff. So you guys might be able to have a coffee and have a good conversation there too. But for you, for the guys in the audience and in the room, what do you have examples of leaders that basically they don't have to be famous people, but people that you see as a leader? They could just be like a supervisor at a cafe or someone that works somewhere, and they're not given the title as a leader. But what are the things that they do that you see them as being a leader, even if they're not called a leader? Is there some things that you can put on there as well? It's a difficult question, I know, but it comes down to, what do you see? How do you feel like, you know, what do you see as a leader or a leadership quality? Just go around the room. One leadership quality.
I think there has to be a driven person, like someone's
driven.
Must be like confident in himself.
Yep, confident, driven. Yep. Okay, what else have we got? Tiago, you got one?
Yeah, because I believe can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you. Beautiful.
Yeah, okay, nice. So because I believe that there is some people that doesn't have talent to be a leader. So I think that to be a leader, you need to be way to talk with the people. Yeah, and you need to be kindness. You need to be you need to have a good knowledge about what are you doing, what are you trying to do, and you need to try many ways to do. So I think that to be a good leader, you need not be a friend of your employees, but I think that is important. So you understand your employees. So you need to know your employees. Yes, exactly.
So they don't need to know how to do it.
Exactly. You need to know your team. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's the way that the leader like involve their team, like live together and teach things, and like the relationship, the way that they approach them, like is different.
Okay, well, go back and see the one I asked her the question about the advice to a younger self when she started Leadership HQ, and see how many of those that Sonia actually mentioned too.
Brett, actually, we couldn't hear the first video that you put here.
Yeah. I'll put it up, and I'll what do you call it? I'll edit it into the start of the video, so I'll put it up on YouTube. So what I'm going to do for the interest of the audience there, I'm going to go through and timestamp it, because this is actually a learning thing. So some of the students that couldn't make it tonight, we're going to put the timestamps on there. When you do that on YouTube, you can click it and you can go through. So I'm going to do that for Sonia as well, and then you can share around if you're talking to a friend or something like that, and they say, but what is leadership, or what is kind and courageous leadership? You can just send them to that time in the video there as well, so that people, who wants to watch a 42-minute video, which we are at the moment as well. Okay, so we've got about 10 things at the moment. Annika, have you got anything that you want to add on there, or Beatrice?
Yeah, I just couldn't put it into just one word. Like when you were talking about to think of someone, I immediately thought about my supervisor while I was working in the airline company. So he was my supervisor, and the thing is that he's very supportive in anything, and he actually thinks about me as a well-being. So me as a person, not just work-related, but also life. He wants me to succeed in all of that. So I think a good leader would be supportive in creating a better you, if you know what I mean. So yeah, because just before I came to Australia, I actually talked to my supervisor saying, I want to quit my job because I want to move to Australia. And just before that, he actually sent me an Excel with the pros and cons if I leave or stay in the company. And he told me, think about it over the weekend. And then if you decide to go, then, that's your life. Just believe that you did the right thing.
Just out of curiosity, was that, you said that was in the airline industry and that sort of thing. Did you have a high turnover of staff on that team?
So the thing is, like, that office in Japan just opened. I was one of the first few staffs in there, and they loved me because I was the only staff there that could speak all 3 languages that they needed, and it would be hard for them to replace me. Yeah, so and I think maybe that's why. But then,
I think it comes under, and it's something I think Richard Branson said, which is that you train people up well enough so they can leave, but you treat them well enough so they don't have to. Now, because of the way that he reacted there, when you said, "Oh, look, you wanted to leave," and he sent you that thing, would you go back and work for him?
Oh no, he was my supervisor, so he wasn't my boss actually. He had another boss, but then he knew that I would succeed more if I move here. But I think he was also thinking about like the possibilities or advantages if I stay in the company. So he said, like, if you stay in the company because he was already like 50 something years old, he said, like, once we retire, you're going to be in a higher position and you'll be training other people. So you'll be the head of this office after us. And I was like, well, you know what? I'm not going to be staying for a long time. Well, in Japan, it's quite common for them to stay in a company for 10 years, 20 years, 30 even. So, but then that's not me. I like to go to other places, have different experiences. So I was like, yeah, no.
But I've noticed that you've got a lot more confidence in class. And I'm starting to understand why that is. This is something that comes through. Particularly when we're doing the research project, I said, why don't you go to these business and talk to them? And what did you do? Went to talk to them. So it's just, but it's something that what I say is it's not your English. That's not the problem, and that's one of the things I cut out of that video. It's cultural differences. But I think now with Australia, leadership goes across cultures these days. I don't think that, I think all the qualities that you've mentioned, you could go anywhere in the world and people would probably come up with the same sort of thing there as what they see as a good leader. Now, this is where I say that there's different types of leaders and things like that. Now, marketing is basically, leaders are in the business of marketing ideas. Okay, so they're not in the business of selling you the ideas. They're doing marketing. Okay, so basically they make a decision, but they make a decision based on everyone and what's best for the average, and then they make a decision. And this is what Simon Sinek says. Yes, you do have to be decisive and aggressive. Not so much these days. You don't have to be aggressive, I don't think. Whereas traditionally leaders were, and they would go on the attack. But you can also do contingency planning to stop pain. Okay, so you go through, you go, okay, right. Yes, this has happened. What's going to stop it? What so I can survive? But then what am I going to do next? Is the thing. And this was what, you know, one of the things that come out with Sonia with the awards program and all this sort of stuff. She didn't even notice that the one of the major sponsors said, oh, you know, they don't know anyone else that could have got this done. So she'll probably go back and watch the speech now and do that sort of thing. But that's where it comes into, I think that you guys, from marketing perspective, you guys know a lot more than what you think. And I know that, you know, Tiago and I had a conversation, and I'm quite happy to get Tiago to run a class with you guys, even though he's one of the new students, on Google Ads, because I've had some people talk about that sort of thing. And this is what he's doing. And he talks about, okay, well, Facebook and all this sort of thing, and we can go through and have a conversation. So this is where it comes into, it's obviously something that he loves doing, because when he came into the class and we had the chat in the afternoon, he was asking some questions about the assessment. But how long were we talking for, Tiago? About 20 minutes? And
20, no, I think that was 40 minutes.
Yeah, 40 minutes. Yeah, there we go.
40 minutes, almost 1 hour.
Now, I can talk because it's marketing and that sort of thing is something that I'm passionate about as well. You know, Sonia and I can have, you know, she said she's only got 20 minutes, but she gave us like 35 minutes. She loves talking to passionate people, love talking to other passionate people. Doesn't matter what their passions are, that sort of thing. And this is where I said, she mentioned her assistant. She wasn't qualified for the job, but she was suitable. And that's what they call a surprise fit. Okay, so even if you love something, you're going to have more interest in it. Everything's relevant. So all of these books and that you read, you're going to say, well, how would I do it? Or what if this happens? What would I do? And you've got options, and you can make the decision on the best option, which is leading into the lady that we're going to get in next week. You know, it's about being courageous in regards to speaking up. Now, she actually put her hand up, and there was a case in the UK. She lives in Australia, but there was a case in the UK that she was actually a witness for, and came up to support someone that she didn't even know. And basically, that's who she is. She didn't want to stand by, and that's a leadership quality as well, I think, that people have too. That's where the courageous leadership comes into it, but also too the fear of failure. You know, yes, she could fail, but she was going to do it anyway. Yes, it was never going to be perfect. She wanted it to be. But this is where it comes down to, when you're operating at that higher level, you need to have some compassion for yourself, like you said. And this is where I said a lot of your students, when you're putting in your assessments, I'm constantly saying that you don't need to do that. Okay. So this is sort of where I think the leaders of the good leaders in the business will say, whatever you do, it's going to be good enough. You know, you might actually surprise yourself, and you might think, oh yeah, but I could have done this, and I could have, like she said, oh well, yeah, I could have done this, and I could have done this, but she took the win. Okay, she knows that she's going to improve, but she's already thinking about, before this one, because she had to put it off 4 times, she's already thinking about the next one. And this is where I think that one thing that leaders do is that they set goals, but they have a strategy. Okay, so she had a goal to create this leadership program, but her strategy was actually she needs to organize an awards night. She needs to do the next one. She needs to sort out the categories. Okay, that's how she's going to do it. So this is where I think, from my point of view, I've seen a lot of leaders out there that are saying, yeah, we're going to survive COVID-19, but then what? Okay, if you're just trying to survive, are you actually thinking, well, what if you more than survive? What if you do survive? What are you going to do? What's the next step? What can you do then? And that's where, you know, the sort of planning comes into it there too. So this is probably more appropriate for the leadership class, but when we're looking at marketing and all this sort of stuff, part of this unit is identifying consumer behavior. And I think that keeping it positive is something that I got out of that. You know, like I said, giving negative feedback, ask to get feedback. is something. I mean, we're told that we've got to give you feedback, but a lot of the it just comes down to that. Well, it's good enough. So the feedback is if you wanted to improve, if you don't mind, this is what you can do. Or I would say, well, have a look at what this business does there as well. Okay. So have we got any other questions before we go in regards to that sort of thing? I'm going to go through and look at the video. Okay. Thanks for coming in. Thanks to the audience for jumping into business class. We've got a few comments there that have come up that we'll go back through and have a look at. Oh, yep, we've got a good example there. So thanks, Jackie. That's a good example of a leader there too. So if you're watching this, put up your comments in there. Who do you think's a good leader? We'd love to see that. I'm looking for positive role models. If you're looking for some positive role models, then jump onto the Outstanding Leadership Awards. So just put up that link again. Okay, so outstandingleadershipawards.com.au. Have a look at, there's over 100 finalists. That's over 100 examples of the type of leaders that I think there should be more of in the world. And I congratulate Sonia for actually getting this program up and running in what's a very challenging time. 2 weeks after COVID-19 lockdown started, I actually had an event plan and we had to pull it because we couldn't just get it going. The government and the university that we're doing it at was going to let us do it, but we just couldn't get enough people to help us run it, let alone turn up to it there as well. So Sonia's basically done that, and she's got 200 people to turn up to her awards ceremony and all this sort of thing, even though it's been basically put off for 4 times. Okay, so we're going to end the broadcast there. Join us next week. Well, the students are going to be here anyway, but if you're in the audience, join us next week for the business class. We've got Susie Dent, who's going to talk about kindness is not a 4-letter word. And it's an interesting talk that she's going to do. And then we're going to take some questions, and she's actually going to explain to people what the Me Too movement is. And I've had some interesting, courageous conversations, we'll call it, with Susie over some different difficult topics. But the reason why we've been able to do that, it's not confrontational and all this sort of thing. And that's what we want to show. You know, people need to learn how to have discussion about the hard topics and things like that there too. So hopefully we'll get a bit of that out of it next week. And, you know, thanks for tonight. And we've all got to go back into the classroom now on Zoom, and we'll talk to everyone else next week.